Rajat, hi, good to have you with us. How have you been?
I've been great, Ashu. Thanks for having me on board here.
I am particularly excited, to have you with us for this session, right? With Sajal from SupplyNote, and this is, a series which is, that Asia Tech Journal is doing in partnership with SupplyNote, right? And food is something which is a very, very interesting subject, right? And the fact that now food is standing at an intersection with technology, right? It's becoming so much more scientific. It's becoming so much more, intelligent, right? These conversations become extremely important, right? Having SupplyNote as a partner is equally important because they are helping many brands like yourself get a very strong technology backend, right? And I think there are nuances that we're going to talk about. I think COVID is opened up us to extremely difficult challenges, right? From a consumer standpoint, right? And we're going to be talking more about that, right? But like I said, it's an exciting conversation they're looking forward to.
Yeah, great. Let's just start.
Rajat, before we dive into the conversation, right, of you building Whataburger, right? I'd love you to take us through your background. A quick round of introduction will be helpful, right, to start with, and yeah, from there we dive into various aspects of the business.
Right. So great. So as it might seem that I'm a guy with some kind of background into business, or maybe some studies into business, or maybe some food technology background. So I'm none of these. By profession, I'm an airline pilot. So it's a profession which is absolutely apart from the food industry. So I've been flying airplanes for almost all my life now. I've been
Right.
13 years in the industry. And as of now, I'm flying as a senior commander for an airline in India, and close to about 7,000 hours. And yeah, so that's more or less what my profession actually was. So as you rightly said, food industry has been the main forte for everybody. It's been the main focus for everybody for a very long time. Primarily because it's an industry which is recession free, predominantly because everybody wants to have food all the time. If
Right.
you're happy, you want to go out and celebrate, you want to have food. If you're sad, you want to go out and have food and cheer yourself up. You
Right.
want a meeting, you'll go and sit down for a cup of coffee with some food and snacks, and that's how you dwell. So I realized that long time back that this is one industry where we should step into and
Right.
develop and do something into.
Mhm.
So I spoke to my childhood friend Farman, who's a co-founder for Wat-A-Burger, and
Right.
we zeroed in on the concept on working on a QSR chain concept. So why QSR? Because QSR has primarily been something which has really been growing, but
Right.
the burger segment in QSR has not been growing so well.
Right.
The problem predominantly has been that burger is never looked at as the mainstream food concept. It is looked
Mhm.
as a snack. So
Right.
people still want to have biryani for dinner, but a burger for an evening snack. So
Right.
we wanted to change that. So we started incorporating the Indian flavors into burgers, and we started incorporating in making them into a meal which can actually be looked upon as
Right.
the dinner time burger snack or the lunch meal that you can have. So, for example, we made the chicken Makhani burger. Now, when you have chicken Makhani burger, it sounds more like a dinner meal. It's no longer a snack.
Right.
So we started working on these concepts, and that's how Whataburger was born. 2015 is where we started working on the concept, and then about a year later, 16 Jan Feb is where we launched the actual Whataburger chain. So that's more or less what my background is. Coming from aviation, jumping onto food industry because I wanted
Right.
to be somewhere in the industry, and since then I think we've not looked back.
Right.
We've been growing, and yes, everything else we'll talk about.
We'll just talk about that one. I think what is particularly exciting is that you've been a pilot, right? And you kind of started this with a friend of yours, right? And
Mm.
my sense is, I think by the end of the conversation, right, and when we're going to put this out, right, for many people who are going to watch it, I think this is going to serve as a huge motivation, right?
Right.
Of because food is something like you absolutely said. I mean, like you rightly said, right? I mean, we're out there. If you're happy, you're having food. If you're upset, you're having food. If it's an occasion, you're having food. If it's it's a very critical part of, I think, each aspect of our lives, right? Existence, right? And I think like I said, I think it's going to motivate many people to venture out and open up and their experiments, right, give it a shape and design. But Rajat, while I do that, right, what is burger has had a great journey, right? Give me a sense of numbers, right, in terms of where you are right now. Also, the fact I want you to throw a little light on, right, is that burger is a category. Burger, when it entered India, right, it was an aspirational category, right? So it started with, of course, McDonald's. They indigenized, the flavors, some bit of that. but you were against a very difficult competition, right? A very institutionalized competition, which had a very global uh, presence, right? And that has its own advantages, right? Vis-a-vis that to what you are creating, right? How do you differentiate yourself? I mean, what made you? I mean, I understand where you're coming from, right? But what made you pick up a category which is that of burgers, right? I mean, it's an extremely competitive category where you have larger boys, right, who are already playing the game.
So see, if you look at McDonald's, since you've mentioned the name, and of course that's a market leader in when we talk
Sure.
about burgers, the concept that McDonald's has is something which was established outside India, right?
Mhm.
And now they've brought it into India and they're trying to reform it to suit the Indian population,
Right.
right? So it's not exactly something which is tailor-made for Indian population. It is something which was made somewhere else, and it is now being somehow modified or innovated upon just to fit the Indian public.
Right.
So a fair example of that is that if you look at the setup of a McDonald's restaurant,
Mhm.
uh, the it's they're predominantly very large kitchens. You'll see large spaces. You'll see automated equipments,
Right.
and you'll see a very different kind of setup. And that setup system is common whether you go to US, you go to
Sure.
UK, or you come to India.
Right.
So we see the setup and requirement for these setups in India is very different.
Right.
So if you just compare the real estate cost versus manpower cost, that ratio is far different in India versus anywhere in the US.
Okay.
So the biggest chunk of your recurrent cost every month
Mhm.
abroad would be manpower,
Right.
whereas in India it is real estate.
Mhm.
So it makes sense that when you're abroad, you would use a lot of automated equipment because you want to keep less number of people on your payroll
Right.
and make them do more number of tasks while
Mhm.
they're employed. Whereas in India, I should rather focus on bringing up my setup cost lower, setting up a smaller kitchen, innovating it in a way where I can do more number of orders in the same space, and
Okay.
while I can have more manpower,
Right.
because manpower in India is fairly cheaper compared to abroad.
Right.
So that is the kind of setup that we started focusing on. And
Mhm.
secondly, McDonald's burgers are primarily the burgers that you get anywhere else. So they are grilled buns, probably a mayo or two,
Right.
uh, single sauce sometimes in a patty, and probably maybe if you're lucky, if you bought something which is upper end of the menu, you'll
Right.
have a slice of onion or tomato or lettuce or something, right?
Right.
So what we do is purely desi burgers. So none of
Right.
our burgers have a single sauce except the base level entry, right? So
Right.
that is, and those sauces also not plain mayo. They'll be somewhere, the Wat-A-Burger peri peri sauce. It's not a off the shelf peri peri. So it's something which we've made. The
Right.
Makhani Burger would have, I think, three sauces or four sauces. So
Right.
it's something which actually goes into the process of cooking. So
Mhm.
it's a hybrid between a cooked recipe
Right.
and a QSR burger. So burger is primarily assembly. So you
Right.
just get buns, you stack everything, and you put a top. But what we do is we have elements of cooking also. Like if for a chicken tikka burger, you have chicken tikka which is actually
Right.
grilled and
Mhm.
mashed, tossed with sauces and then sauteed and then put inside the burger, right?
Right.
So the setup is very different. So we've kind of done a fusion food. So the
Mhm.
food is not exactly what McDonald's sells,
Right.
and food is not exactly mainstream food. It is somewhere in between, and that's how we've been creating that category, which we see immensely growing.
Right.
Because McDonald's abroad is some more of a necessity food than something which is of leisure, right? So
Right.
you wouldn't go to a McDonald's in US because you want to have an evening snack.
Right.
और आज Sunday है आज McDonald's चलते हैं. So that won't happen, right?
Right.
It's more a necessity. You're driving to your office, you want to grab a cup of coffee, you want to have probably a
Quick bite.
cheeseburger in your hand, a quick bite, and you start driving and you're
Right.
munching into your burger, sipping onto your coffee. That's the kind of concept that McDonald's was born in.
Right.
But that's not something which is here in India. Nobody wants to have burger while going to office. So
Right.
people here step out after the movie. चलो यार कुछ खाते हैं बाहर. आज
Right.
मेरा birthday है, चलो मैं treat दूंगा. So I mean, at this time when you go into a McDonald's, they have what 4, 5, 6 SKUs
Very
into
interesting.
which. So we realize that this is a space which needs a lot of work,
Right.
and burgers per se are not the category which are being targeted the way they should be targeted.
Right.
And we should create a niche category into burgers where people can enjoy the food with variety,
Mhm.
rather than just have a menu which was predominantly designed for needy people for eating burgers in the morning while driving to their office,
Right.
and just grab onto them and have them on a Sunday meal. So
Right.
we changed that concept. Now the total number of SKUs that we have on our menu, if I'm not wrong, they should be close to about 10 times, maybe more, of what is there on the McDonald's menu.
Right.
So we have a huge variety. So as an Indian, you want variety, you want choice. So, so you would not stick to a single variety
Right.
every single time that you walk into a restaurant. You want change,
Right.
especially in metros. People don't want to step into the same place and eat the same food every single time. There's no
Mhm.
loyalty with food. You have to keep
Right.
innovating. So that's how we develop the products, and that's what our focus has been always, to create products which are different,
Interesting.
which are innovative. People find something interesting, something new. Like we just launched fantastic kadai paneer burger, so which is, again, by the name of
Right.
it, you would want to eat it. So that's the kind of things that we've been doing so far.
Very interesting. Very interesting, Rajat. I mean, I have like a bunch of questions, right? I mean, on the entire piece that you mentioned, right? And I would want to go on, right? But I think I'm gonna do it in a more structured format, right? But
Mhm.
what are the current numbers like right now? I mean, so what are the number of stores that you have? What are the daily orders that you're doing? Would love to know a little more about that.
So we are close to about 62 outlets now,
Okay.
and we are at the pace of about 1 to 2 stores addition every month. So
Interesting.
this month we'll be adding 2 stores, and then
Okay.
we've signed up some master contracts for some southern states,
Mhm.
state of Kerala and state of Tamil Nadu. So we are
Right.
doing our first store there in Calicut,
Mhm.
and post that we have 24 more stores lined up. So since it's a master contract, the growth is going to be planned, structured, and quick.
Right.
And otherwise, we of course we are doing a store in Bhopal now. Very soon, we're looking for a good spot. It'll be a flagship store.
Mhm.
During the pandemic, we've done about 10 to 12 odd outlets that we've added, and all dine-in. So our
Right.
focus in pandemic has changed completely from being a delivery-oriented brand only to dine-in-oriented brand also. Now it is quite contrary to what you would believe otherwise. That in COVID, it makes more sense, to have deliveries as your focus rather
Right.
than dine-in.
Right.
But we realized that once COVID is over, people are just flouting to restaurants.
Right.
So we were running out of space everywhere wherever
Mhm.
we had dine-ins, and tier 2 and tier 3 cities were least affected. So
Right.
our focus shifted, and now we are doing stores in the larger format more than the stores in the takeaway format.
Mhm.
We've evolved our menu to a way where people are experiencing new things. So
Right.
food experience is a core focus at the moment, that
Sure.
whoever walks into the restaurant, it's not just the food that they get, it's experience also, and how
Right.
the food is served to them is what also our focus is.
Very
So
interesting.
we're changing all of that, and that's the kind of strategy we're employing. Number of orders, well, I'll really have to look up what we are doing currently, but if I'm not wrong,
Broad reach will be helpful.
pan brand, we should be doing close to about 5,000 orders daily.
Mhm.
So
Wonderful. Interesting. Rather, I'm particularly sort of, I am itching to ask you the question, right? I mean, the kind of SKU range that you have, right, is
Mhm.
fairly complex, right? Now, what that possibly does is that it opens up you to many, many challenges, right? And I think that's just an antithesis to what a QSR concept has to be, right? Which is very industrial in its nature and behavior, right? I mean, here there are things that you're doing, at the store level, right? Which and there could be a delivery differentiation, right? But I'll come to that in just a bit, right?
Mhm.
I want to ask you more about the ideation process around building this, right? Because I'm an Indian palate. When you talk of the India market, right? I mean, India is an extremely complex market, right? I mean, your taste patterns in, for example, say a Delhi-like market or NCR-like market will be very different from what you get in Bombay or what you get in, say a Calcutta or that region of the country, and and down south, right? It's an extremely complex way, right? I mean, so what goes into getting it right? From an SKU standpoint, right? Because see, at the end of the day, like we discussed, right? I mean, you are a QSR, right? There are a lot of things that you'll have to very quickly do right to ensure that the economies of scale that are hitting you, very early on, right? And you're not necessarily kind of squandering it away, right? The mileage that you have and the advantage that you have and the relationship that you have, right? What essentially goes into deciding that SKU, right? I mean, how do you sort of, uh, figure those pieces out, right? And how do you add those pieces, right? Is this a purely performance driven play, saying that this is what this is what we have on the SKU, this is essentially what my per SKU performance is on a monthly basis, on a quarterly basis, or is there more to it, right? So that this could be a version which could introduce. I mean, what's that process like?
So the process, we'll talk about it, but the process, whatever it is, cannot ever stay stagnant. I mean,
Sure.
how we were deciding our menu 5 years ago
Right.
is not something we use today,
Absolutely.
because the market is completely evolved
Sure.
and it's still evolving.
Right.
So if you look at it, when we talk about taste, our segment that we are targeting is about, I would say, 16 years to 35 years of bracket. That's
Mhm.
the ideal population that we're trying to target with the food that
Right.
we have. Of
Right.
course, it's a fit and go to restaurant for people above 35 also, and below 18 also. At the
Sure.
same point of time, that's a target audience.
Right.
So in that target audience, 50% of the consent to eat food comes from social media today. So
Right.
it's about how the food looks,
Mhm.
what is fancy about it,
Right.
what is trending about it, and the
Mhm.
remaining 50% is taste. Now, if you go
Right.
back 5 years, people will just focus on how the food tastes,
Mhm.
maybe some numbers for how it looks.
Right.
But now that has transformed into something where taste can be okay, but
Mhm.
the food should be something which is popular. And then people
Right.
click selfies and Insta stories and all of that. So there's a lot
Right.
of things which are happening, and all of these cumulatively affect how we decide our menu.
Right.
So what we go by is not just food which looks good and tastes
Right.
good. We also want to have things which are trending. So
Right.
there's something for which a natural, or a, I would say a demand has popped up in the
Right.
recent months. We would introduce that into our menu in a way where we
Interesting.
can handle it, have
Right.
it in a way where even if the item is not very tasty, reform it in a way where it becomes tasty
Right.
and people enjoy the food. So
Interesting.
it's a very complex call, but more or less it is data driven. That's number one. So we pick up data and find out what is selling, what is not selling. We
Right.
do internal data metrics also, where we see in our own menu there's a certain trend towards something. So
Right.
we know certain months now where chicken
Mhm.
wouldn't go. We know certain
Right.
months where vegetarian food is lower. We know certain areas or regions where lower price menu hits. We know certain regions where lower price menu is a kill. So anytime you sell something cheap, it would backfire. So you should have things which are expensive.
Right.
So we recently, what we've done, we've just launched a fantastic range of burgers which start at 29 rupees.
Right.
So now, if you look at it, I think McDonald's did aloo tikki.
Mhm.
That was the revolutionary change. 25
Right.
rupees mein aloo tikki,
Yeah.
and we did 29 veg fantastic now. But if you ever get a chance to have it, you have to go to CP to have it. And
I will.
that's the only store which is doing it as of now,
Right.
because it's on a trial basis. So we'll soon have it pan brand, but that burger in itself is fully loaded. Like, it's
Right.
got veggies, it's got a lot of cream mayo, it's got a lot of things inside.
Right.
So it's not a simple aloo tikki kind of a burger. So we took up the concept of a low entry model, as I
Right.
said. We reformed it and made it tastier in a way where we can have it as a QSR. It can be made quickly, it can
Right.
be cost effective, and it can still be tasty. And then we launched it. So
Right.
that's the kind of model that we have into product development, that we
Mhm.
pick up things which people want,
Right.
or pick up segments that people want, introduce
Mhm.
items in those segments, or introduce those items which people are looking for, and then
Right.
reform them into a system where it can, into kind of a setup which can establish into our system and then introduce it. So that's
Right.
what we've been doing. And of course, this strategy, it's a very plain and simple strategy by words of it, but otherwise the process is very complex, and we keep evolving that. So it's data driven in terms of our post sales, data driven in terms of what market requirements are, which products are selling in the market in the way of raw materials, the demand of public in terms of seasons, in terms of how you go for shakes in summers, and
Right.
smoothies for like January is predominantly a time when people focus on healthier meal options as New Year resolution.
Right.
So Jan and Feb is where I will not launch a chocolate shake. I know,
Right.
because the sales are going to be low. January is a time when you focus on high protein burgers probably, or
Right.
grilled patty. That is the time for that. So there's a lot of complex call to things, and if you
Right.
combine all of that, you can make a decent strategy which gives you good results.
Interesting.
I'm just curious, Rajat, how do you guys go about like maintaining the quality of the products? I mean, on the backend side of things, how do you test? What are the standards that you set up for testing of those products to essentially qualify like this is what will be used and this is something that will be discarded and so on?
So there's some quality check which is done at the time of finalizing a raw material also. So it goes through an extensive set of tests where we do office trials, and we do store trials, and we do industrial trials, and post that we start the item at a single outlet only, which predominantly has walk-in public. So for example, CP is a good spot because we only have dine-in sales there, very less percentage of deliveries. It's mostly dine-in. So we get immediate feedback from people. We have a policy where any new item launch is recorded for feedback from people, so that we get an idea into how it is being accepted in the market. So that is one process of onboarding an item, that we go through quality checks in the office, through the company, industrial trials, and then start it as a trial version into one of our running stores, take public feedback, and realize if it is running and clicking or not. Once it does, then it is introduced to the supply chain system, where it starts getting distributed to all these stores. Now, once that happens, of course, the supply chain has some quality control over it, where there are certain policies which are followed, what item is acceptable, what is not acceptable. Then it goes through a quality team through our company. So all the items are same. So once the SKUs come to our warehouse or come to our company outlets, they go through a quality check again. In store, I mean, of course, quality would become a problem in terms of shelf life if we have things which are standing in the kitchen for a very long time. But the kind of orders that we do, we usually get stocked out. And every 10 days or 12 days, we come into a situation where the manufacturer is unable to supply because the demand is higher. So this kind of a setup where your SKU rollout is very quick, the shelf life is never a problem. So quality predominantly becomes a problem at the manufacturer level only. So if the product is manufactured well, transported well, and delivered well, it is reached the store in the state where it is supposed to be, it will stay that way.
Interesting. I have a question, right? You mentioned something about a Wat-A-Burger, right? I think early part of a conversation, right?
Mm-hmm.
How did that happen?
About what burger?
About a Wat-A-Burger, right? I mean, there was a name that you gave
Fantastic.
it, right? Fantastic Burger, right? I mean, how did that happen?
So Fantastic was launched in the middle of COVID, I think 3-4 months back. Right. And the idea was that we saw a lot of pull on kadhai paneer.
Right.
So we anyways had a lot of fusion food. So we had chicken Makhani Burger, we had paneer Makhani Burger in some spots. We have desi street style fries. We have aloo chaat surprise burger. We have desi street style burger. Aloo achar is a top selling item, entry level burger. So you have a lot of Indian food concepts. So we saw that yaar ye kadhai paneer ka na matter thoda missing hai. So we Indian public के हिसाब से butter chicken तो हो गया है, थोड़ा कढ़ाई पनीर भी होना चाहिए. So then we started working on it, and the idea was how do you hold the gravy in a way where it actually stays on the patty. So we made capsicum. Yeah. So I to make it more food orgasmic, I'll tell you how it is made. Right. So what you have is a bun layer at the base that had some sauces, has a good, nice loaded paneer patty. And paneer patty in Wat-A-Burger restaurants are all fresh patty. We don't use frozen patty at all. Okay. They are freshly coated and fried. So we do that, and on top we have a ring of capsicum. So capsicum where it is sliced in a way where you get into a ring. In that ring, we fill in the kadhai paneer gravy, and then we put on the top. So when you take a bite, you get a bite of the capsicum, you get a bite of the gravy and paneer along with some bun. So it is fantastic kadhai paneer where you have kadhai paneer inside a bun. So that was the concept behind building it. And yeah, so since then, since I think 4 months, we've been doing this burger now.
Yeah, Rajat, I have a follow-up question, right? And I'm sure Sajal has a question too, right? But before I hand it over to him, right, I want to ask you this, right? I mean, I was in a recent conversation, right, and that was with a very dear friend who's the founder of a D2C brand, right? Now, when we were discussing, right, and we were essentially discussing about homogeneity in the Indian market, right? How complex the market is, right? And we were essentially trying to solve for, how do you basically create a product for an as complex market as India is, right? And one thing that he kind of mentioned, right, is essentially the keeping a base very tight, right? So according to him, and that's the mechanics of doing it right, is that about 90% of the base product continues to remain the same, right? There's just about 10% variance, right, and on the higher side. I mean, they try and reduce as much, right? And as per him, right, in about a couple of years, they'll get to a point that just about 5-7% of variance should be enough to get to a new product, right? Now, what we understand with what you're doing, right, is extremely complex, right? You're leaving it in the hands of the people at the restaurant to kind of engineer, right, the last mile, which makes it very, very complicated. That's number one. Number two is this seems to be a very large SKU bucket, right, which could result into say wastages, which could result into loss of experience, right? The other thing which is very critical is more on the pricing side of things, right? When you're dealing with that large a bucket of SKUs, right, it creates an added pressure on the overall pricing play that you have, right? So while of course you want to launch a 29-30 rupee burger, what is essentially happening is that other things are putting a stress on that, right? And given the market side pressure and so much of competition, right, that restricts your ability to go out and up price, right? How do you play in an environment like that? I mean, this is a fairly complicated position to be in, right? Where the market forces are, constantly pushing you to come up with cheaper products, right? And you really can't compromise on the experience because there is a certain delivery expectation that your customer has to be, right? What do you do in an environment like this?
So, well, I would answer your question differently if I was a single restaurant owner. My market dynamics would be different. My thought process would be different. The way I would procure my items, store them, supply them, everything would be different. Now, When we talk about chains, as you rightly said, the base is what needs to be stagnant.
Right.
It needs to be consistent, because if that has variance, then of course your whole menu goes for a toss.
Right.
So we pitch in for a 5 to 4% variance only in every recipe. Now, how do we do it? So one, of course, the biggest thing that you need for managing a chain of this sort, which is spread across the entire country, is a good supply chain management system, without which all the supplies and maintaining them on course is close to impossible. So imagine 20 stores procuring items from 20 different distributors, right? So how would I maintain my quality checks? How would I give numbers to the manufacturer? What kind of projections do we have? It's all impossible. So what we essentially do is we bring everything down under the same umbrella.
Right.
We bring it down under the same roof, which is our supply chain company, SupplyNote ad count, and they maintain the entire inventory with them. So how this helps? Well, one, very effectively, it helps in projections, because I know exactly what I'm consuming every month, pan brand. So I can give decent projections as per my growth in percentage to the manufacturer. So we're never out of stock. Two, it helps in great negotiations. So why we could go low cost is because we know what kind of numbers we are dealing with. So if I buy X item from 20 distributors, there's no room for negotiation beyond the distributor. But when I combine those orders down to a single roof of the supply chain, now I can negotiate with the manufacturer. So of course we get pricings which are better than distributor also, and then we have our margins there. So that's which is why we can hit low cost. So supply chain essentially becomes the core function here, that without the supply chain maintaining consistency across a brand like this with this kind of SKU is close to impossible. So that is one major part. The second is we've broken down our entire menu into single unit SKUs, or probably 2 or 3 SKUs. That's it. So for example, how do you normally make cold coffee? If you want to make a good thick cold coffee, you'll probably add 2-3 scoops of vanilla ice cream, you'll add some milk, you'll add coffee, probably some sugar or some flavoring, and you'll blend it, right? How do we make it? We have a single premix for all of this. We just put it in the blender along with ice and milk and blend it. So this is not a one night or overnight development. This is something we took close to about a year to develop. And we hired a company for doing it. So they helped us homogenize the mixture and give us the entire cold coffee recipe that we had in a single premix format. How this has helped, now the consistency is maintained, because 1 teaspoon is not the same for every staff member. Somebody takes it level, even in spite of all the training. Somebody will take it level, somebody will take it slightly heaped, somebody will take it more heaped. I like strong cold coffee, so I'll make strong cold coffee for everybody. So that is the kind of challenges that you face. So to break the training to almost to nil required, we just brought it into a homogeneous mixture concept. So as of now, all our shakes are single premixes, no complex recipes. All the complexity is handled at manufacturer level or backend level. So that streamlines the process. So if I have to make an Oreo shake and it involves 8 different SKUs, I would compile them in that same mixture into one single mix and give that to the store. So I've reduced that complexity at manufacturer at expertise level, where it is handled at factory level, at quality control, at office warehousing. And now what the store end receives is a simple recipe of 3 items. So whether you make cold coffee, you make Oreo shake, you make butterscotch shake, you make kesar pista, you make strawberry cheesecake, whatever milkshake you make, your recipe is the same. You put in X amount of, or you've given a scoop and you put that into your blender, you put ice, you put milk and you blend it. You're done. So it becomes fairly simple to handle. Now, if I have this mixture available with me, it solves 50% of the problem. If I have a supply chain to supply this mixture pan India, it solves 100% of my problem. So that's predominantly what we've been doing. Same with sauces also. So the Makhani sauce is a Wat-A-Burger recipe sauce, which is made for us. Same as a peri peri, same as cheese sauce. A lot of things we now do are customized seasonings, customized sauces. Now, one is that with these kind of things, I can negotiate well with the manufacturer, because they're tailor making products for you, so your quantities and everything are handled pretty well. The second biggest chunk of benefit that this has is that you have a tight control on your stores, and you have uniqueness. So, for example, I go to an XYZ outlet who's using A vendor mayonnaise, B vendor patty, and C vendor buns. Now I simply pay the guy in the kitchen and tell him, okay, I'm opening a burger joint next door. I'll pay you twice the salary. You come over to me. I procure the same items from A vendor, B vendor, C vendor, change my name to probably something else. How's your burger? Where's your burger? Whatever I want. And I repeat the same menu item at a lesser cost, right? So I've efficiently just copied your model. The second problem is franchises going rogue, where, the simple
And that's a big one.
question. Yeah, you see this in all major brands, that
Right.
they would just start thinking that why should I pay the brand royalty? Okay, not thinking about all the hard work that goes into developing new products or how we are
Right.
managing the system, all of that. The simple count is that why should I pay X percentage for using the brand's name? I should just use my own name.
Right.
Right. So that kind of call is nullified here, because the products that we use are not available in the market only. Those are
Right.
our products. So the moment you move out of the system of Wat-A-Burger system, supply chain system, there is no way you can make the cold coffee that we make or any of the shakes. Even the guy who's working in the kitchen does not exactly know what he's putting in the blender. He just has a powder which says Wat-A-Burger coffee mix. That's it. So he just puts that into the blender and makes it. So even if you hire him, he'll tell you, I need Wat-A-Burger cheese sauce, I need Wat-A-Burger peri peri sauce, I need Wat-A-Burger patty, I need Wat-A-Burger chicken patty, I need Wat-A-Burger shakes mix. Now, how would you replicate that menu? So you have to come to my supply, right? So that's the kind of system that we've made to secure the menu that we have, which gives our franchises the comfort that your menu cannot be replicated. What you are selling is something which cannot be duplicated, especially in a tier 2, tier 3 town, where competition pops up like mushrooms. People think so that way, it gives them a peace of mind that everything that I have is through a secured channel, through a central supply chain. It's efficiently managed and it's unique.
Hey Rajat, I was just wondering. So you're just talking about like how things have evolved to this point. I'm more keen about knowing when you guys were initially starting up, how did you guys like go about going into the market, finalizing like where to get supplies from, and what sort of like how did you exactly start it up? What was your initial journey like on the terms of supply chain building up and all those things?
So see, Wat-A-Burger growing into a chain is not a fluke or something which has happened by chance. It is a well-structured, planned model. Uh, for example, the signage that we use, the logos that we have, they were trademarked even before we opened the first store. And we had the entire theme in mind and designed at that time itself. So if you look at the first store designed in 2016 January, and you look at the last store designed in 2021 July, you will see resemblance in both of them to almost 80%, right? We've just innovated things. So having said that, what I mean here is that the entire process of replicating the model across the entire nation was something which was a part of the initial plan only. So everything that we handpicked, whether it was the vendors, the product SKUs, the raw materials, everything was done keeping in mind that if I can't serve this in Gorakhpur or Jhansi or Ranchi 3 months from now, it is something which I should not be doing here. So that is something at the back of our head when we are still planning things, that how would we take this to Itawa? How do you replicate this? So if I have one SKU which is being tailor made but it cannot be transported, it's a waste for me. There's no point. And if you believe me, growth now is really in tier 2 and tier 3 more than tier 1. So we had that concept from day one. So everything that we picked, the initial menu that we had, we made that in a way that it can easily be replicated for our franchise setup. We've been a franchise setup all through. So we have about 20% stores which are company owned, and the remaining 80% are franchises, because we want to focus on the core area of building the brand, developing a better menu, rather than getting into operations. So operations we do predominantly just to check what we've made, to handle operations ourselves, so that we realize what kind of market we are working in, and we have a clear cut first vision picture into the scenario. But otherwise, our focus is always on building a better menu, organizing things better, making it into a brand kind of a setup. So the menus and everything forced us to pick up vendors which are available pan India initially, because of course with 1 or 2 stores you cannot hire a supply chain system. It is too much of a cost. So we went for vendors who have their centers in at least metros, who can supply in Gurgaon, Noida, Lucknow, all the popular cities where we intended to expand initially. And once that was sorted, once we had numbers over 10, we started foraying into things like, local warehouses, local chains, through which we can probably send stock in bulk and then handle it. And eventually, I think about a year and a half later, SupplyNote ad count moved in, which helped us, streamline all our vendors under one roof. And since then, we've been handling everything through a supply chain system, if that answers the question.
Brilliant. Rajat, I'm a more interesting one, right? And I think I'm sure, this is something that you're being talked about and asked in many, many conversations, right? Is what's the sales landscape right now? And and I think especially this becomes important in a post-COVID environment, right? And something that you kind of alluded to, right? In a certain sense and way, right? is that there is a huge debate which is going on saying that, why do you even need retail infrastructure, right? On one hand, while I'll agree with what is being debated, right, and discussed, that I think people are getting so much more comfortable in their home setting, right, that you're going to see more dark kitchens, right, to come up and the food getting sort of delivered and so on and so forth, right? And then there is this market, right, which is just waiting to sort of go out, right? There's a huge pent up demand. They want to go out, they want to sit, they want to dine and experience, right? But my sense is, I think there's going to be harmony between the two, right? Somewhere. I think it's not going to be either this or that, right? I think it's going to be a hybrid model, which is going to work for most brands, right?
Correct.
What's the current, construct, right? What percentage of orders are essentially coming in an online format? And I think it's an unfair question in a given circumstance, right? But I'd still love to know, right? Over a period of time, how is this been, right? Dine in or store level takeaway versus deliveries.
So it's not an unfair question. I would say it's good that you asked this question because I would just split this into regions, because there are certain regions which have behaved very differently from others. So when I talk about all tier 2 towns, I think we are almost back to 90% of our pre-COVID numbers.
Wow.
And as a matter of fact, there are some cities which are doing better than pre-COVID,
Right.
so post-COVID. And the dine-in numbers are unaffected. I mean, the day the lockdown was lifted, just everybody's back in the outlet. It's like they were just waiting for the stores to open. So tier 2 and tier 3 towns, I would say, are back to the original format. And there is absolutely no change, no repercussion. Delivery dine-in ratio remains the same. Usually any tier 2 good town does about 50% deliveries, 50% dine-in. And we are a hybrid setup only because we believe in the same format that nobody's going to order food and delivery always. Nobody's going to eat and dine in always.
Right.
So stay 50%. I mean,
Right.
we are not a pure dine-in brand. We're not a pure delivery brand also. So all our stores have seating. There are some which yes, we did shift to a takeaway concept during COVID.
Right.
Especially in NCR, only in NCR as a matter of fact, because we realized that local laws are prohibiting, and there's a lot of confusion between Noida and Delhi and Gurgaon. Delhi is all open, Noida is not. Weekend lockdown, wahan weekday lockdown, wahan night lockdown. So we said just keep the frenzy to one side and let's just have stores which are takeaway for now. And we shift this to every single store which is takeaway has a format of moving to a dine-in. They have space, they have everything. They've just started off as takeaway to cut costs, and the moment we have the market back to normal, we shift to a full dine-in. At the same point of time, stores like CP, they are doing pre-COVID numbers already. We are at 70% of our pre-COVID sale. The best number pre-COVID. We are 70% of that number, I think, mid-July. So places like CP have already rebounded back completely. All smaller towns like Lucknow, Gorakhpur, Ranchi, Jhansi, they've more or less been unaffected. And वहाँ पे तो जैसे फर्क ही नहीं पड़ा है. Lockdown lifted and everybody was out on their bikes and cars and they want to come to a restaurant and eat. So on these places, what we've in fact done is we've introduced a more extensive dine-in menu. So we've launched better looking freak shakes, with a lot of loaded cream topping, all of that. We've done some dine-in concepts like apple pie with ice creams and some ice cream sundaes also. All of dine-in food, things which we are not going to deliver at all. These will only be dine-in. We've added a huge menu towards dine-in in all these places, realizing that they are doing better number of dine-ins now than pre-COVID. So it's a very, very different call in Delhi NCR and very different outside Delhi NCR. Delhi NCR is, I think we are back to about 60-70% again in most of the locations. Some locations where we do have lockdowns still, like all of UP. So all of UP has weekend lockdowns. I think we had the first Saturday sale this Saturday, where it was allowed as a dine-in day. Otherwise, Sundays are still locked down. So Saturday, Sunday being predominantly the best days for dine-in sales. So there are still these restrictions which are stopping us from getting back to normal. But otherwise, I would say Pan brand, the number is 50% already, if I look at it, because majority of our stores are still in NCR. And the projection is that we'll be almost 90% by end of August, because July mid onwards was a huge jump. So I think that by December, the industry should be absolutely normal for everybody.
I think one thing which is a common constant across, I think, Indian consumption appetite is resilience, right? I think we can just bounce back, like how, right?
Yes, because
I think Sajal
actually we don't care.
No, I think there are many factors, but I think we'll abstain from getting into that conversation. But I think Sajal has a question for you, Rajat.
We were talking about how we are expanding to new cities, and you always had this plan about like when you are going to the different cities, the tier 2 and tier 3 towns. So is there a strategy that you are following about for the customer acquisition specifically? I mean, when you're going to a new town, is there any like go to market strategy that you have in mind, or is there any strategy? What do you exactly do for getting the customers onto like to as a to become from customers to the evangelists of Wat-A-Burger, of the brand itself?
So usually see new customer acquisition in small towns is fairly easy. I mean, you start about a month or two in advance and you'll put up signages, hoardings, you make the brand public, you make it sound like something big is going to happen and you build up anticipation. That's what we did in Ranchi. Same we did in Jhansi for all both the flagship store launches. And people actually had built up anticipation. Ki, "Yaar, ye hone kya wala hai? What is Wat-A-Burger? You want to go and see." Now, I think we posted some videos also for our Jhansi launch, and we had queues for almost 1.5 hours where people were waiting to get inside the restaurant on the first day of opening. We were out of stock the first day itself, and we had stock for 6 days. So it was way beyond what we anticipated. So that's what we normally do in tier 2 towns. Social media, of course, is an effective tool. So we use that also, some ads playing on that Wat-A-Burger is coming in 4 days, 3 days, 2 days. So it all depends on what city we are targeting, what kind of store it is the dine-in store, large dine-in, what concepts do we have? And so we choose a marketing strategy accordingly. In Delhi NCR, it's more or less like recurrent marketing. So because there's so many of other players in the market, you have to keep reminding the same guy, bhai, हमसे भी order करना है. ये नहीं कि भूल गए. So the difference here is that you don't actually target just new customer acquisition. A customer who's long lost also is also new customer acquisition for you. So you have to keep reminding people that we exist. We are also there in the party. So that's the kind of marketing setup that we have in Delhi NCR. So we do these DOTD days, which are deal of the day, running on Zomato's, I think every Friday, sometime Wednesday, sometime Thursdays. So we have these 99-day offers, like everything on the menu is for 99 on those days. So we don't make any money out of it. On some SKUs, we actually lose money. But overall, if I look at the cost factor, we actually have about 10 times the numbers that we would normally do on a day. So we are just making people try our food without spending any money. If you look at the bigger picture. So if I target WhatsApp marketing, if I target SMS marketing, if I target any kind of marketing, there'll be some cost per customer that I'll be spending. In this kind of strategy, I'm actually not spending anything. I'm actually just giving free food, right? And that free food means I'm just recovering my food cost. So I'm not earning anything from it, but I'm not losing also anything on it. So I'm still telling people, I eat this. If you like it, order next time. Eat this if you order next time. So people are trying out your food by focus of, just being on 99. So visibility goes probably 20 times. Of that, you get 50% of the orders. So you get 10 times of your normal numbers. So that's the kind of strategy we run in NCR regions, even in Lucknow now, where we have DOTT days to remind people that we exist. Otherwise, we have our own ordering platform now, which we just started in COVID with DotPay, where we have BOGO offers every Wednesday. So every Wednesday, the whole menu everywhere pan India is off by 50%. So we're trying to build a market where people start focusing on these specific days, order directly and things like that. So new customer acquisition is again a mixed area. I mean, if you talk about all India, tier 2 cities is very different. You just create a hype for something that, okay, this is new, this is in, this is where you have to be, and everybody will be there. Whereas in Delhi NCR, you just have to remind people, boss, we also exist, we also exist. Dine-in anyway, see, dine-in, you can't pull people much in a burger joint in places like Delhi, because there's so many options. While the guy is walking to your restaurant, he'll go somewhere else in the middle because he's walking and रास्ते में उसको 3-4 board और दिख गया वहां चला जाएगा. So I think you can't really control that unless you have some pre-booked table on some charge and something else, then it's different. But otherwise, by just ads, while the guy is walking to your store, he'll just get bitten by somebody else. So but deliveries, yes, you can remind people, and those are good numbers in Delhi NCR, especially now with the offices reopening, the whole Gurgaon sector emerging again, all of the offices coming back to normal, Noida coming back to normal. I think next 1 month should be a pretty positive picture. I mean, to give you an insight, I think SupplyNote we gave a projection for 15 days of some consumption that was sold out in 1 day. So the guys called back and they said, boss, this was supposed to be for 15 days. We're out of stock in 1 day. So, I mean, we also can't project at the moment, the way it is expanding now, the way it is growing, the numbers are really coming back to normal very quickly. So we just hope and fingers crossed that it stays that way.
Interesting. Right. And that's a good aspiration to have, right? And with aspiration comes my next question, right? I mean, see, a large part of what you're doing, Rajat, essentially is fueled by franchise, right? Franchise growth. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what typically happens is, and this is a strategy which is being played out, right? And there are a lot of international brands that are being brought into India. I mean, McDonald's was brought in by a couple of people. Now, a lot of other brands are kind of entering India, right? With Indian, master franchisors, franchise owners essentially bringing them in, right? And these are also people who are looking at tier 2, tier 3 markets, right? You are also essentially sort of, wanting to grow in the same market, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now there is a huge question of aspiration, right? And I'm also going to bring in a COVID kind of an element, right? And what COVID essentially did was that it brought people to essentially be dependent on content, right? Because there was nothing else to do, right? Which essentially reduced that arbitrage between certain markets, right? That existed. So say a Delhi NCR market would, a Lucknow would also very closely, or there could be a very high correlation, right? In the behavior of these two, for example, markets, right? Arbitrage in city further down like a Jhansi will still, of course, I agree there could still going to be a lag, right? But the aspiration is changing, right? Do you think, and the newer brands are coming up, do you think it's going to be a difficult turf for you? It's the arbitrage that you have, or the abnormal profit zone, for example, that you have, right, is only going to be limited to the next brand which comes into that city, right? Because food is something where, like, you have to innovate, right, constantly within your own menus. There has to be, consumers also want to try newer brands, right? What happens in an environment like that, right, where the aspiration is raging, there is liquidity in the hands of the consumer. There's clearly a demand, right? They want to experience newer things, and there are newer brands that are coming up, right? Which makes it an extremely complex position, right? What's your thought about that? I mean, how do you? I mean, is there a cognizance that you take of this, that there is a possibility which could emerge, which could make it difficult for us? How do you dissect the situation, right? I mean, how are you preparing yourself for a situation like this, right? I mean, this is something that we're already seeing in a tier A market, and it's going to go down in a tier 2 market very quickly, right? What's going to be your defense in the process?
You see, this goes back to my previous conversation with you about managing brands and how McDonald's and we are different. So we don't exactly fall in that category which any of these brands are. So if you look at any of their menus, there'll be limited SKUs, and they actually deal on volume, not variety. So you'll have the same burger, but made into probably 20 times what we do as a generic burger in our best-selling store.
Sure.
So they deal mostly on volumes, but not varieties. Now, when we talk about tier 2 and tier 3, the first restriction that these guys have is the supply chain.
Right.
So the way we can function in Gorakhpur, Etawah, and Jhansi and Ranchi, Burger King will have to really come with a plan to do that. That's number one.
Okay.
Right? We are locals. We were born in India. For us to figure out things locally is a piece of cake. And a lot of things that we procure easily through vendor tie-ups and figure out. The basic difference being that the verticals are so limited to pass through for a decision execution that the call becomes fairly easy, right? So if I'm taking a call, it's just limited to me, right? I don't have to ask my CEO for Burger King for some approval, so there's no documentation which is involved over approval process, and I understand the market pretty quickly that way. So when we enter into a market like that, for us to make products available is far easier than a chain who will have to plan it and introduce. Secondly, when we talk about tier 2 cities, treat it like a small house. Like, I would not say a small house, I would say a joint family. Now, in a joint family, you've got two dadis, let's say, okay, like one chacheri dadi, one pakki dadi. Now, your real dadi is cooking a buffet every day and putting it in one part of the house, right? The other dadi who you love more is cooking only palak paneer and serves it with roti, but she makes it very nicely.
Right.
Now, you'd go and eat palak paneer maybe once a week. Right. I give that to you. Okay, go here, eat one day. 2 days, enjoy the palak, enjoy the nicely made palak paneer. But the remaining 5 days, you would come back from the buffet. Why? Because you want variety.
Right.
So the point is that when even in smaller towns, when we have these bigger brands come in, what we see is, of course, the numbers drop. But they drop till the time everybody goes and tries. And then they come back to us. So even in satellite areas of NCR, like Greater Noida, or let's say Sector 83, which is New Gurgaon, we've had these. I mean, when we started in Greater Noida way back, 2016, along with the first store, that's where we opened. There was no Burger King. There was McDonald's, but there was no Burger King. Burger King opened up way later, I think about a year and a half back. but it did drop the numbers, but for a very limited time. So these places, they would always open up in strategic locations, high visibility areas where you don't miss the brand. You just go and eat it. That's what their strategy is. Nobody would drive for 10 hours or look through a gully kocha and reach a spot. Bhai, yahan McDonald's hai. Yeah, nobody does that, right? McDonald's is right in the front. So you basically, they've put it on your face, ki have my burger, have my burger, have my burger. So that doesn't work in small towns. In small towns, people step out कि यार आज संडे कुछ खाते हैं, चलो यहाँ चलते हैं, वहां चलते हैं, मॉल चले गए, मजबूरी में 500 रुपए मजबूरी में खर्च स्मॉल टाउन में कोई नहीं करेगा भाई. They would need a choice when they are spending $500. So they would go to McDonald's when they want to. They would not spend 500 for the, कि चल यार इसको खा के खत्म करते हैं, let's just go. This happens in NCR, of course. It happens, when you're going shopping to Ambience Mall, and I want to have a quick bite. Okay, let's go and grab a burger. Why? Because it's right there. You step in the food court, the first shop is McDonald's. You're on the bottom, अपना वो ground floor वाला base जो level है in Ambience. There's a McDonald's का counter there also. You want to have a quick softie? Okay, let's go and have a softie. So that's the kind of visibility platform that they play on. But if you have a mood to sit down and have a cup of coffee and have a nice sandwich, you'll walk to Starbucks and go there. Because that cannot be replicated. The kind of varieties you have in coffee, you won't get anywhere else. So you'll walk and you'll find Starbucks and you'll go inside, but not to McDonald's. So the difference in the way you think about the brands is very different when you go to a small town. They create all the jazz. People want to go and try, Happy Meal, toy, McDonald's, photo खिंचाएंगे, burger king, कितने बार करोगे? 2 बार. But अगर आप vegetarian हो, especially, तो आप आलू टिक्की और पनीर बर्गर कितनी बार खाओगे McDonald's में? One day you will get bored, right? Then you will come to us. So we'll wait for that. That kind of anticipation is there. Okay, we'll wait for 1 month. You go try everything, click photos, post selfies, do Insta posts, and then you come back to us. Because the kind of variety that we'll give you, these brands can never have.
Interesting.
Like from a perspective of technology, how technology is helping you guys? I mean, when you're talking about curation of menus and you're talking about how you're using the data for finding out which product are working and which product isn't working, what is the exact role of technology that is being played in overall infrastructure of Wat-A-Burger? From curation of menu all the way.
So technology is, I think, the core part of any business now. I mean, I don't think you can function without technology in any way. So it helps us build and keep quality control. That's number one. So our backends are linked for the POS and the supply system. So anytime I can feed in my sale reports to a certain sheet, and I can get a figure out of what kind of numbers this guy should be ordering from the supply chain to keep that menu constant. For example, I want to check a store in Jhansi. I'll just take up their POS reports and I'll file it into a separate system, and I'll get a number for what kind of SKUs they should be ordering. I can simply match that with SupplyNote. And since I have a single point supply, I would know immediately if that guy is buying everything from SupplyNote or not. If there's a mismatch over a certain percentage, I know there's some local ordering, and then we can do a quality check. So this is also part of technology that we know exactly. The ordering system, I mean, gone are the days, I think, when you would use your phone for anything. I don't think any of us has ordered food over the phone for the longest time now. Over a call is what I mean. Over the phone, yes, but over the call, no. So nobody uses phone calls anymore. We all use apps, websites, all technology-driven platforms. So even the supply chain system, thanks to SupplyNote again, they've built a system for us where all the ordering from franchise end is done through the technology model, where we have a website kind of a thing, something which is similar to similar to Amazon. Very soon we'll have integration for warehouse inventories also there. So a guy who's ordering, he'll know how much stock is left in the warehouse, so they can place orders accordingly. And you just simply go tick, select your order, place an order. It comes to our quality team now. We made a new vertical in the system, which is Wat-A-Burger quality. So all the orders come to Wat-A-Burger quality. They see what a franchise is ordering in what region. If there's something which they're missing out, every order they'll ask, why aren't you ordering this item? Are the sales down? Things like that, So we have that vertical now. So technology is used at various verticals. I mean, ordering system, numbers from there, projections for finding out what kind of numbers we're going to do. Of course, all the Zomato, Swiggy, DotPay, these are all technology platforms. DotPay is the bridge between a customer who's wanting to order from the restaurant directly. Now we have QR code based ordering also, again through DotPay. So QR code ordering enables us to take orders from the table itself without coming to the ordering counter also. So you can sit on the table, scan the code, place the order on your phone, and the order will come right to you. We've also done some in-car dining with QR codes. So Sector 31 in Gurgaon has an in-car dining setup where there's a neon signage. The store is on first floor. It's a huge outlet, but it's a market which has a drive-through. So it's basically a virtual drive-through concept. So you just drive through and you will see a scan and order sign. You'll see a QR code lit there. You scan it from your car, you put your car number, place the order, and the guy would come and drop the food to your car. So we're going to work on this model more, and we'll be evolving it into drive-throughs, which can be done at lower cost. So again, if McDonald's has a drive-through, they'll pick up the model from US, plant it into India, not knowing that here we don't have the kind of setup on curbs where you can actually set up a store, which is why the drive-throughs are limited to hotels and markets, and you have to really drive it. Not even a drive-through, it is you have to make it into a drive-through, intentionally drive through it. It's not a proper drive-through also. So we are trying to reform that again and build it on a vertical where it can grow in India. So in India, we know that none of the highways will have spaces, where you can just simply have a restaurant on the side, because there'll be curbs, there'll be things. So you normally have elevated platforms and you can't drive a car through there. So we'll have these virtual signages. That's the plan, where you'll see a large QR code, order your meal, pick up 5 kilometers later. So you scan and you place the order. 5 kilometers later, you just have a pickup point. There's a guy standing there with your bag. The restaurant might be 500 meters away, but the guy standing there with your bag, a delivery spot, there's a signage, you stop there, pick up the bag, and you drive through.
This is a delivery of a different kind of.
Yes, so it's a drive-through, but made for
with delivery.
Drive-through. That's how, with delivery.
Interesting. Let's get towards the end of the conversation, right? I mean, I've loved each bit of it. I'm sure so did Sajal, right? Right. What are the next 2 years like, right? What are I'm sure there are targets that you've set for yourself, your team, right? What are the next 2 years like? Also, one point that I would want you to sort of talk about is D2C is picked up in a huge way, right? There are many brands that are coming in. I mean, we've seen, for example, Momo Market, for example, right, getting disrupted. Who would have thought that it's going to be available in a frozen format, right? And there are going to be D2C brands which are going to do that, and there's a massive shift which has happened, right? I mean, they are literally out of stock, right? What happens as that market picks up, right? So yeah, I mean, I'd love to know your thoughts.
So next 2 years, okay, starting with that, we have a lot of things in the pipeline. So we are going to launch the plant-based meat burger, starting with Gujarat. Right. And we've been working on that product for a very long time. And now finally we've figured out that, okay, we have the right product. I think we'll be the first burger chain launching it in India, where we have a plant-based meat patty. And the focus is not going to be plant-based meat, because that doesn't make it exciting. I mean, if I tell you that Ashu, let's have a plant-based meat burger, so you'll be like, okay, for the sake of it, we can try, right? But it doesn't make it exciting. Now, how we would do it is we'll introduce it as the Tuesday burger or the Saturday burger or the Navratri burger. The chicken that you can actually have in Navratri.
Right.
So, or in Savan, or maybe, I mean, in India, you have, I think, 30% of the days in a year where you can't eat non-veg. Right. And especially places, where you have family dominance. Dadi घर से बाहर निकाल देंगी, मम्मी बात नहीं करेंगी, तुमने ट्यूसडे को नॉनवेज क्यों खा लिया? So, there are a lot of things. मैंने मन्नत मांगी है, मेरा IT clear हो जाएगा तो उसके बाद मैं नॉनवेज खाऊंगा. So things like that. So now at least you get that experience where you're tasting meat, you're tasting chicken, but you're actually eating vegetarian. So we want to focus on that. India being a country which is different from others in this aspect. Right. And this region behaves in a way where you have these meat eaters who can't eat meat on certain days.
Right.
So that's the audience that we're trying to target, not the sustainable target. And sustainable point is not going to work in India. See, people buy CNG cars in India not because they are sustainable, because they are cheap. The cost of running is low. So we're in a different kind of market altogether. So here I'm not going to target on sustainability. The focus is going to be on people who want to eat chicken on certain days. So that's one. Plant-based meat burgers are going to come. We're going to revolutionize the entire dining experience at Wat-A-Burger. We're going to be innovating a lot. So we've done a new menu, which is now available at CP stores. So if you ever do walk in, just have a look. We have these new freak shakes. We've got a lot of new milkshakes launched up. We have some smoothies coming up. Mojitos, the way they are served, the entire dining experience has been reformed. Some new range of burgers. We've recently launched a grilled patty, which is 100% chicken. There's no MGM, no added, and that is something which we focus on a lot of products. I mean, even in our premixes, which are used for cold coffee, the sugar is minimal, just as required. There are no corn syrup, corn starch, nothing like that. 100% milk fat used, no artificial sweeteners, no artificial fat agents, nothing like that. So we focus on that quality also. So we going to have a good dine-in menu. In the next store we are starting with is Surat. Again, being a large dine-in store, we are announcing a new menu there. Next comes up Lucknow, and then we'll have slowly, gradually all stores shift to the new menu platform. We have a good dine-in experience. So the next 2 years, we're looking at 100 stores by the end of this year. Hopefully, we've got a 25 store contract in the south as a master franchise, which is going to start in Calicut. We're just waiting for the Kerala lockdown and Kerala situation to stabilize a bit, because the franchise is primarily for Kerala and Tamil Nadu. So once that is done, we'll start the expansion plan there, and we hope to hit 100 stores by December. If another lockdown or third wave isn't on the way, we hope to hit 100 stores by the end of this year, and of course next year we aim to double it. We also plan to have some strategic investors on board by this year end, and to focus on the growth and take the brand international. We've been talking to some people. I have a friend of mine who's running a good, successful hotel chain in UK, and he's interested in partnering and opening up a Wat-A-Burger store in UK, because the demand for fusion food is very good in other countries also. So they want to do that in burgers, and we were targeting that also. So it all depends on how the entire situation with COVID fares out, but the plan has these things in the pipeline.
Interesting. Rajat, I was recently in a conversation with a founder, a very dear friend now, right? And we were essentially talking about plant-based meats, right? And you'd be surprised, right? And this gentleman, just to give you a quick background, right, was serving in the Indian government with that job, and essentially is one of the leading manufacturers of plant-based meat, right? And to my surprise, they are getting orders from tier 2, tier 3 cities, and how, right? And this was something which kind of flabbergasted them and their team, right, when they were, looking at the data, right? But there's a huge pent-up demand, right? And I like the way you are kind of putting it out, saying that, there are, regional aspects, there are, religious aspects that we have, right? And we are a country with those notions, right? And it becomes important to kind of take care of them, right? And I like the fact that the way you put it, right, that many of the larger chains will not be able to tackle it, and not at that speed, right? Because there is a certain hierarchy, there's a certain process that they have to follow, right? And there comes the game where an agile player like yourself will be able to spot those opportunities faster, react to those opportunities faster, right? And build a much larger, visible, more relationship-driven brand in the process, where people come for the taste and the experience and the diversity, right? Not necessarily limited to just one of few SKUs, right? But my last question to you, right? A very, very last question to you is, what will be that advice that you would want to give, right, to many people, who are in the food business, right, who are possibly at an early stage, right, and many of the aspirants, right, who've been looking at food as a space, especially in a post-COVID environment, right, as an option of possibly a second income, maybe a retirement plan, right? What will that advice be?
So one is, don't wait for the perfect opportunity, because it will never come. You will have to start. And when you start, it's the perfect opportunity. So I come across a lot of people who just, I'm waiting for the right time. I'm waiting for the right market. So that time will never come. You have to start when you're ready. And you should be ready when you are ready. So that is one. Two, don't wait, or don't focus on a certain skill set, thinking that, yaar, मेरे पास MBA नहीं है, मैं business कैसे करूँगा, मैंने accounts नहीं पढ़ी है, मैं tax कैसे भरूँगा, I have no knowledge in food, how will I curate a menu, so entrepreneurship is something which comes from within. So if you have the desire to do a business, you'll figure a way out, you'll solve your problems, and that's what the entire entrepreneurship is about. You want to run a food restaurant, it is more of entrepreneurship today than anything else. You don't have to be a chef can cook very good food, but he cannot run a very good restaurant. These are two different aspects. Just like, a very good student cannot be a very good teacher. So you have to understand that very well. So if you have the desire to run a business, just step out. I mean, my skills, look at it. I mean, I'm an airline pilot, but I use the skill set which I've developed over all these years for food also. It's not that those skills are a waste. So I was taught how to, coordinate between different departments, maintain sanity, follow procedures, checklists, processes. I've incorporated all of that into Wat-A-Burger, and I see results from there. So whatever skill set you have, use those, build upon your business using those skill sets, and just start. Don't worry about the right time to come, the bad time to come. Food industry is something which is always bright in India. I mean, everybody wants to eat. Everybody will spend money to eat. So if you want to do something in food, have a good business plan it out. Don't wait for the fluke to happen that I'll open a chaat shop and it will become the famous chaat shop, and then I'll go into 300 stores. I mean, I personally don't believe in that kind of ideology. So
Right.
I believe in the kind of sense where you plan it out. I want to be a 200 chart shop brand. So
Right.
I'll open the first one with that vision in mind. Now
Mhm.
you will set things right and set things in motion. So they'll work the way you plan. So planning is very important. Have your
Right.
vision, have your goal. What exactly do you want to achieve? A guy in retirement plan somebody might focus, on sitting on a beach shop and sipping onto beer and cooking burgers and flipping burgers while as a part of retirement. The other might be focusing on sitting in an office and managing 200 chains.
Right.
It depends on what your plan for your retirement is. I'm just at home and I have a setup of 200 restaurants and they are giving me a good chunk of money. The other
Right.
doesn't care about the money; it's about the experience. Yeah, I get enough money to run my show, but I'm enjoying in a beach shack. I sit by the beach and have a sip of beer every evening and cook my burger and shut my shop and go home and sleep. So whatever your vision is, focus and build your plan according to that vision. Have that clarity from day one. Make a plan. Use your skill set, whatever you have. Keep redeveloping your skill set as you go, and don't wait for the perfect time. It will never come.
And
Every
I think
time
I
is
think I completely agree with what you're saying. I completely concur with what you're saying, right? I think the only constant across, I think, each of those situations is start out, right? I think that's the most important. Right.
yes,
Rajat,
that's very
with that,
important.
thank you so much. It was genuinely a pleasure to have you with us. I mean, how I want this conversation to go on. This was from the heart, and I love the way how intelligently you've really broken things down, right? How you enabled the back end in a very sharp and a smart way. How you ensured that this consistency and quality which is delivered, as you grow as a brand, and we would love to see you in the international markets, right? And we hope that those plans come to fore. And we have an Indian brand which is knocking at the doors of the larger international brands, right? And giving them a run for money in their own natural markets, right? Rajat, it
I
was a pleasure to have you with us. Sajal, if you have any last words.
Well, thanks, Rajat. It was pretty inspiring to hear about the journey. And to be really honest, I'm craving for ordering from one of the right now. But yeah, so it's really inspiring, and I mean, it also gives me a lot of insights about like how you guys have changed your recipes of as simple something as like a cold coffee and have put up data algorithms and everything into it, the entire process of standardization. And that I think is the ingredient for success to any F&B brand, I can assume. And I think that's it's gonna be pretty inspirational for other entrepreneurs who will be looking at and watching that video. So thanks. It was a pleasure to hear all this from you.
Thank you,
Thank you,
guys.
Sajal. Thank you, Ashu. The pleasure was all mine too. And let's connect again and stay in touch. Thanks a lot for
Absolutely, yeah.
today.
This is